this, right? That we're now going to the last portion of Noach, of Parashat Noach. So over here it says, right, first of all, before we get to this, I want to mention something we talked about last week. We talked about last week about the duration of the flood. How long was it, right? Remember you asked this question? So we said it was a few months, whatever, this and that. The truth is, right, if you calculate all the portions of the flood from beginning to end, it comes out to be a year.
From the first raindrop till the ark landed.
Totally becoming dry.
Till the ark landed.
Even more than that, right? Until it was totally dry. So we're talking about a year. What does that mean? That means that it was 40 days of rain, torrential rain, and
Perfect timing. New student.
Baruch haba. So it was 40 days of torrential rain,
Right.
and then after that,
Sure stuff.
we had 150 days of strong waters. What does that mean? Vaygabru, it says Vaygabru amayim. That means that all the well springs from the ground also opened up, and they, flooded. They started to flood, and the flood was tremendous, colossal. And the highest mountains got even drowned, right? Even the highest mountains, wherever, Mount, whatever they called, right? Everest and all these things, they all got drowned. So everybody died. So what happened was that this was 150 days. It was strong. The waters were strong. And then it says after that, so altogether now we have 190 days, right? Because it's 40 days of rain, 150 days of strong water. So then we had again 40 days that the water started to subside, to get lower and lower and lower and lower. And then what happened was after that they had to wait until the ground got dry and everything and all these things, so altogether it turned out to be a year, so which is 365 days. Whatever, even less than that, because we're talking about a Hebrew year, not really a solar year. We're talking about a lunar year, which is like a little bit less, right? 15 days less, whatever. So that's the way it turned out. So altogether, they say, right, the judgment of the Dora Mabul, of the generation of the flood, was 1 year. Right? Why? What do we care about that? What difference does it make for us? So they say it's going to be the same thing for Gog and Magog, right? Gog and Magog, the third World War III, when they're going to have this big war, when they're going to come to attack the Jews, and there's going to be Mashiach and all these things. Also over there, they say it's going to be 1 year. The judgment of Gog and Magog, his armies, is going to be also 1 year. Same thing, right? So, in other words, it seems to be some kind of like a trend in the Torah that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges the wicked, he judges them for a year. When it's a big judgment, something large, huge, like it was here. Also, it's going to be for Gog and Magog. It's also going to be a huge judgment. The final judgment of the Goyim, all the things that they did against the Jewish people, all the atrocities that they committed, and all these things, they're going to be judged. It's going to also take a year. That's what it says, right? Okay, so let's get back to where we were. Now, right, as we said, right, we're out of the ark already. We got out. Okay, we're out of the ark. So now that we're out of the ark, we have to talk about the descendants, right, of the three children that Noach had, right? Was this Shem, Ham, and Yafet? By the way, the Chazal tell us, right, that who was the oldest one of these, the brothers? Yafet was 2 years older than Shem. He was 2 years older than Shem, and Ham was the youngest out of all of them. So Shem was in the middle, right? And Yafet was the oldest brother. That's the way it was. Anyway, so it starts now to give the descendants of Yafet.
Excuse me, but in that case, how come Shem is always first?
Because can you guess?
Because he was the tzaddik?
Exactly. See, I knew he knew the answer. I knew it. There you go. Because he was a tzaddik, so tzaddik is put first. That's the way it is, right?
You actually learned something in yeshiva while I was goofing around over there.
We can see that. So the tzaddik goes first. That's the way it is, right? And that's exactly what happened with Yaakov Avinu, right? Even though Esav was the older brother, but Yaakov Avinu became the Bechor. He became the firstborn. Why? Because he was a tzaddik and Esav was Rasha.
No.
So
because he was conceived first, and all the birthrights were belonging to him.
Right.
This is what we learned.
Yeah. So what happens is that
he was older anyway. No matter how you slice it and dice it.
So Esav was born first, right? You know that.
Yeah, but Yaakov Avinu was conceived first.
That's absolutely true. But in this world, we go by who's born. You know what I mean? That's the way it is. You're right what you're saying. But nature. Like whoever comes out first is considered to be the older son. That's the way it is. It's natural stuff. You're right what you're saying. I'm not arguing with them. They point that out, the Chazal, what you're saying. They pointed out that really he was conceived first. But anyway, the point is
exactly what we learned.
That Yitzchak Avinu, you're right. Yitzchak Avinu considered
the bathroom with Gotcha.
Yitzchak Avinu considered, right, Esav to be the firstborn, and that's why he wanted to bless him first. You know what I mean? So he wanted to bless him first. As far as he was concerned, Esav was the firstborn. But then HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, listen, you're mistaken. What can I tell you?
These are
this
brothers,
guy,
right?
Yeah, exactly. They were twin brothers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, getting back to what we're saying, now it starts to list, right, the descendants of Yefet. So I just want to point these out because all the nations of the world are coming from these three sons of Noach, right? So we have to know who's who and what's what, because the Torah is the only place you see that identifies all the nations of the world, basically. Even today, like in the United Nations, I think we have like about 150 countries, they say. Right? But the truth is, according to the Torah, there's really 70 nations. Meaning what? That now there's like sub-nations that have, been divided into more and more and more and more because there's wars between them, civil wars going on, then they split up, you know what I mean? That's the way it goes. All these things are going on, But the truth is, there's only 70 nations, and they correspond to something else, right? Which is what? There's 70 families of the Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people. There's a correspondence there. What does that mean? In the Jewish people, we have 70 families, and in the Goyim, they have 70 nations. So what does that mean? That for every Goyish nation that there is in the world, there's a corresponding Jewish family that looks like them, same appearance. So in other words, you see Jews, like there are Jews who look Spanish, and there are, Goyim who are Spanish. So everything's like that.
Is that so we can infiltrate?
It's good. Yeah, it's a good thing. You're absolutely right. Because we had to go to Galut, we had to infiltrate into those countries. We were in exile. So we had to infiltrate, and the whole point was that because we looked like them, and and everything, so they felt comfortable with us. You're right. That's true. It's true. It's true. But there is corresponding. So this correspondence is not just in some kind of coincidence. There is something very important about it. What that means is that that we're supposed to be like the higher element of that nation, of that family. We're supposed to be the elevated part, and they're supposed to be down. You know what I mean? So what happens is that if the Jews are not behaving properly, so it becomes the opposite, right? The Jews go down and they go up. So they become like the elevated, and we become the.
Is that what happens?
It happens many times. It happens very often, right? So because of that, there's always a correspondence though, because every nation has a twin nation that every family has a twin nation amongst the Goyim. So now we have to understand, right? So we start out with Yefet, right? So Yefet, as we mentioned in the last few weeks, was the European people, right? And also we said there was also Paras, there was Persia and Turkey. That's also Yefet. We said, right, Tiras is Paras. Tiras is the youngest brother, the youngest son of Yefet is Tiras. That's Paras, that's Persia. And we said, right, who's Turkey, by the way? So Togarma is Turkey, right? We're going to see now. Togarma is one of the sons also. So we're going to see how it goes. So it says like this: Ve'ele toldot bnei Noach, Shem, Ham, ve'Yefet, ve'yavudu lehem banim b'achar mabul. Bnei Yefet, Gomer, u'Magog, u'Madai, ve'Avan, ve'Tuval, u'Meshech, ve'Tiras. So when it gives you all the sons of Yefet, comes out to be here, we have 7 sons altogether, right? Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, Tuval, Meshech, Tiras, right? So now Gomer, we're going to see, right? Each one of these sons is the forefather of the European nations and also the other nations that we mentioned. Okay, so it says, right, Bnei Gomer. So Gomer was one of the sons of Yefet. It says his sons were Ashkenaz, Vrifat, and Togarma. So these are the Germanic people. The blonde, white Aryans, whatever they call that, right? They have all these names for that, right? Right. So we're talking about the Goyim now, not the Jews, right? We're talking about the Goyim. So these are the Germanic people. These are the Germans. You understand? So in Germany we have like different families there. We have Austria, we have Germany, right? All those people are really one family. Basically one coming from one root, which is Gomer, right? That's right. So these are the Germanic people. Then we have Uvnei Yavan. So then we have Yavan, right? Yavan was the second son of Yefet. So Yavan is what? You know what Yavan is? Anybody know? Greece, right? Yavan is Greece. So the Greek people, he was the forefather of the Greek people. But inside also, this family is also Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, Dodanim. Kittim, the Chazal says, is the Italians, right? So the Italians and the Greeks are like brothers, kind of whatever. Mm-hmm. So they all come from Yavan, right? It's one big family there, right? So we have one son who's a Germanic, father of Germanic. We have the other one who's the father of the Greek, Italian, this kind of the whatever, right? And then we have Me'ela nifredu yeh goyim be'atzot ish lebeshano v'shpachton goyim uvnei Ham. So okay, that's pretty much what it mentions regarding the.
It also mentions something Gog Magog over there, no?
Right. So we have there Madai, right, and Tuval. And Meshech and Tiras, right? So we already mentioned last week that Tiras, right? Tiras is Persia, right? And according to Yosifon, according to Josephus, Tiras is Russia, right? Ras, Rus. You know, right? Yeah. So Tiras is Russia. So it seems like Russia and Persia is like also one body, one family.
What happened to us, the Georgians?
Well, we're the Jewish Georgians, you know, but if you're talking about the Goyim Georgians, so they also are brothers of the Greeks. They are also in the Greek family, right? Right? Yeah, like yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Yeah. By the way, they say that, you know, I don't know if my father told me that there was like a migration many hundred years ago, that the Georgians came. There was a migration from Spain, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they came to Georgia. The Spanish people. We're talking about the Basques, you know, the Cataluna, whatever they call these people. And they came to Georgia, and they became the ruling class in Georgia. You know, the ruling class in Georgia seems to have Spanish origins.
Yeah, we are descendants.
Yeah, we're not talking about. I'm not talking about the Jews, right? I'm talking about the Goyim. Talking about the Goyim, right?
Yeah, but we look like.
Yeah, we look as we said, right? We correspond to them. It's a corresponding family. You understand? Our family corresponds to the family of the Georgians. That's the way it is. That's why we're there.
Yeah. How did the Georgian Jewish sect? How many of us are there? Very small percentage, right?
We're talking about altogether 200,000 people. You should know. Georgian Jews. Yes. Wow. 150,000 in Israel.
So how did we?
Georgian Jews?
Yes, huge. It's a big tribe.
How did we?
How did we get to Georgia?
Yeah, whose offsprings are we?
What's the history of Georgia?
We look like Georgians. If we wouldn't know, we could. Any one of us could. Who looks Jewish here? I mean, you could be a Georgian or a Jew.
You want to prove that I'm Jewish?
No. What I'm saying, that's a good one. What I'm saying is, we all look alike. Georgians just look alike. So you don't know. If you didn't know. A Georgian in the neighborhood was part of the congregation.
Yes.
For all you know, it could be a Christian Georgian.
Right. Yes. You can't even tell the difference.
Do you know where we came from?
The history seems to be like this, right? From I heard from several sources.
Yes.
It seems to be that the Georgian Jews. First of all, the Georgians themselves have history about the Jews. You know, they have archives.
Sure
they have archives about us. And according to their history, we've been in Georgia over 2,500 years, like, you know, more than that even, right? It seems to be like 2,800 years, whatever. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Rabbi, because Georgia, when my mother used to tell me this stuff, and my mother, she passed away young. She wasn't one of these 100-year-old people that, you know, told you. When she was telling me that Georgia was one of the oldest countries on the planet, I thought she was crazy. Georgia is one of the first nations, even though it's a tiny nation, to take on Christianity.
Yes,
Georgia.
Probably is. Yes,
in
yes,
the 300s.
Yes, that sounds right.
You remember even John McCain told us when Putin went in, he said we have to protect Georgia. You know, McCain has a thing about Christianity, and you know, like they all do. So he said they're one of the first nations, the oldest nations, to take on Christianity. So we have to protect them. You know.
I hear that.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the point is like this, right? That they say that. So if you look at, you know, the Jewish history, right, you take that date that the Georgians claimed that the Jews have been there at that time. If you look in Jewish history, it corresponds exactly to the first exile that was, you know, done by the king Sanherib, right, of Ashur, of the Assyrian king, right? Who he exiled the 10 tribes, the northern kingdom, in 3 stages. Right, in the first stage that he exiled, it seems to correspond exactly with the time that the first Jews got to Georgia.
One of the tribes.
Right, exactly. So according to that, we should be coming from the northern kingdom that, you know, was exiled first before the kingdom of Yehuda, of Judah. Right, that's the way it should be. So now I saw another book also, which says something interesting. There's a book about Ketubah, Mishpat Ketubah, right, of Rabbi Bar Shalom. He writes over there that he found out about Georgian Jews, so forth, so on. So it seems like they have a tradition that they come from Shevet Binyamin, the tribe of Binyamin. Now, we have to clarify what that means, because that's a little bit strange. Why is that strange? Because Shevet Binyamin, this tribe of Binyamin, was not really in the northern kingdom; they were in the southern kingdom. So if that's the case, so it seems like I found a solution to that, to that problem. That the solution seems to be, you have to understand the history of the Jewish nation. In the first temple, during the first temple, there was a lot of crazy things that went on. So one of them was that there was a civil war, right? The civil war in the Jewish people. There was several civil wars. I'm talking about the first civil war that occurred was, there's a whole story there that the story goes that there was one guy who had a woman, And
we had a civil war here too.
yes.
Small
So the one guy has a woman, and this woman gets raped and killed by some thugs, whatever. And so this guy is like goes crazy, and he wants to do something about it. He wants to have justice done. So at that time, it seems like there was no king. In the Jewish people, there was no unified government. So they had a little bit of a difficult time to do justice, whatever. So what happened was that he sent out he cut up her body into little pieces, like these crazy people do. But he wasn't crazy, this guy. So he cut up her body into little pieces. He puts them in boxes, and he sends them out to every area in Israel, whatever. Every. So why did he do that? He wanted to and he sends a letter with that and saying this is what these people did. They raped this woman and killed her. We have to do justice. So it turns out, right? They find out who's the one who did this rape and murder, this whole thing. It was from Shevet Binyamin, right? From the tribe of Binyamin.
Georgia.
Well, let's not get too far. This was in Israel, right? So what happens is that now all of the Jews get together in one place, right? They make an assembly. The place that they assembled was called Mitzpah, right? Mitzpah was in the north. So they assemble, and they send a very strong letter to Shevet Binyamin, to the tribe of Binyamin, and they say, these murderers, you have to hand them over to us. We have to do justice to them. We got to kill them, execute them, execution. So Shevet Binyamin refused, and they said no, we're not going to hand them over. It doesn't really say why they refused, by the way. It seems like they just forever, they didn't do the right thing. They made a big mistake over here. So they refused to hand them over. So the Jews, all the 10 tribes, 11 tribes are together against one tribe. You understand? That's the way it was. So okay, so what happens is now they tell them, okay, if you don't do it, we're gonna do the justice. Either you hand them over, or we're gonna come there and wipe you out. We're gonna make a war with you. So that's what happened. They started a civil war. So comes these 11 tribes, and they attack Binyamin. So they say, right, that the first 2 battles that there were between them, it turns out, right, that they say over there that the warriors of Binyamin were very, very powerful people, very, very mighty warriors, So they were able to defeat them the first 2 times. They had 2 battles and they defeated them. The whole 11 tribes they defeated. Can you imagine such a thing like this? So they were. It says they were slingers. They knew how to sling very accurately, and so they were able to kill people like that, whatever. So it turns out that they the first 2 battles they win, and then finally, right, they got all together, and beat Binyamin. So what happened was the 3rd battle, Binyamin got beat very badly. They made an ambush on them. They made an ambush, So what happened was that Binyamin got almost wiped out, the tribe of Binyamin, from that war. What happened was it only was left over 600 young men. Everybody else was killed. 600 men. So these 600 men, now once the war was over, so the Jews, got together and they said, listen, we have to find a solution for these boys, because if we don't get them wives, Shevet Binyamin is going to be wiped out altogether. And that cannot be, right? All the tribes have to exist in order for the world to exist. So they try to find a way to get them wives. What was the problem? What's the problem to get wives? Well, you can find girls. What's the problem to find girls? So the problem is that they made an oath, before the war, that none of them would give their daughters to Binyamin. In other words, they were so bad in their eyes, so they made an oath. They swore, we're not going to give our daughters to Binyamin. So they had to find them a solution. You understand? Otherwise, the tribe is going to get wiped out. So what they did was, the solution that they tried to do was that they found out that when they had the assembly, that assembly, right, in Mitzpah, so there was one town that from there they didn't come to the assembly. They didn't show up. Right? They no show. Right? Rain check. Right? So they had no show. So they, Dafka, were very angry at these people. They said, you didn't come and show up. This is terrible. You should have taken responsibility. What is this? Just stay home and watch CNN. What's going on there? What are you doing over there? So they were angry at them. But now, actually, it turned out to be something good. Why? Because those people who didn't come to the assembly, They're right. Though, what happened was that they didn't swear. They didn't make that oath about not marrying Binyamin. So therefore, they tried to get 400 girls, who are unmarried, and 600 actually, right? They needed 600. So they tried to get the girl, but they only found 400 over there in that town. You understand? So they were still 200 girls short. That's what happens. So what happens now is that they decide that what they're going to do is that there was like 2 days out of the year in the Jewish calendar where they had like a dating kind of thing, like love day, whatever, Valentine kind of thing, whatever, the Abdil. So that's called Tu B'Av, right? It's in the Hebrew calendar. It's called Tu B'Av, which is in the summer. So there's one day like that, and also Yom Kippur also they used to do this. What they did was on Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur. Can you imagine Yom Kippur, which is supposed to be a solemn day, right? Fasting and this and that. What they did was that the girls used to come out in the vineyards, like in a nice garden, garden environment, with woods, and they used to come out and dance with each other, the girls, and the boys would come there and check them out, with the binoculars,
like we do here,
look like like this, and if they would find a girl that they liked. So they will go to the parents, and say, I want to get married with you. How else can you do it, right? You got to see the girl, right?
No, I mean on a holy day.
Right, exactly. That's the most amazing thing. That on a holy day like that, Yom Kippur, they were doing such a thing like that. And the truth is, by the way, that it's not really such an amazing thing. You know why? If you really think about it, because getting married is considered to be a very holy thing. You know what I mean? So actually, it fits in right into the scheme. Because getting married is a very, very lofty thing. You have to get married. You have to have children. You have to, this is one of the most important mitzvot in the Torah. So therefore, that's what they did. So what happened was that they said, you know what? On that day, when the girls come out to dance, what we'll do is that now there's 200 boys left over that need girls. You know what I mean? So they'll come over there. And instead of asking the parents to give, they'll just grab the girl and go, This way, in other words, the parents won't be over the oath. They won't be, breaking the oath. Why? Because they didn't do it themselves. They got snatched. That's it. That's the way it is. You understand? So that's what they did. So they, motatzula, Yeah. So, we had that also by us.
I always thought it was a bad thing, but it's...
Right. In this case, it was necessary. There was no other choice. You know what I mean? There was no choice. Right. By the way, Halacha says you're not allowed to marry a girl against her will. So what that means is that the girl wanted, but they didn't ask the parents. You understand? They did it without any permission from the parents. That's what it means. The girl has to want it. There's no question about that. Otherwise, it's rape. What kind of thing is that? So what they did was they grabbed 200 girls and they went. So that was the time. Now, what happened was that Shevet Binyamin got rebuilt from that, from that story. Otherwise, they were almost wiped out. So what happens is now that you have to realize one thing now. This town that they didn't show up in that assembly, where was that town? It was on the other side of the Jordan, right? Transjordan, right? On the eastern side. And this is where the first, exile occurred, over there, in the Transjordan, on the other side. Where you have now the country of Jordan. That's what we're talking about that, right? So, over there, there's a town called Yavesh Gilad. That's the name of the town. So now what happens now? You have to realize, right? What happened was that this town, was belonging to one of the tribes that was over there, right? There was 2 tribes over there on the Transjordan. There was Reuven and Gad and Menashe, right? So it must have been that these ladies were maybe, let's say, from the tribe of Gad, for the argument's sake, from Gad, whatever, these girls. So the Binyamin took them. Now what happens is now it's like this, that if you as a husband take a girl, and she has an inheritance, from her parents. So you as a husband inherit that inheritance. You understand? So what happened probably was that Shevet Binyamin went over there to live over there because they had to take the girls over there. So it could be that that's the reason why they were there, because and then they went into exile from the first time that the king of Sancheriv, right? Tiglat-Pileser was his name, right? Tiglat-Pileser, that was the name of this king. They say that Chazal say that really it was Sancheriv, the same guy, but just different name they used him over there. It was really one king. Sancheriv was the king of Ashur, the king of Assyria. So whatever it is, anyway, there's all kinds of issues there. But anyway, the point is, right, that the Georgians seem to have a tradition that they're from the tribe of Binyamin. But I must tell you that it doesn't apply to all of them. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because when that first exile occurred, and Tiglat-Pileser went and exiled the Jews, there was also a few other tribes there that he exiled as well. There was also Zevulun, there was Menashe, right? There was Gad. So I would probably venture to guess that the Georgians are from those tribes. But it seems to be like the major part of the Georgian is Binyamin. You know what I mean? The majority. Whatever, and then also you have to realize that the Georgians are also mixed up. Why? Because then later on came from other countries to Georgia, from Persia, from Iraq they came, all kinds of places. They came from Russia also.
They probably mixed with the real Georgians.
Right. So what I'm saying is now the Georgian people are like a mutt nation, meaning what? That they're like mixed from all kinds of Jews from all over the world. It's not really like so uniform. So today now it's very hard to guess already, where they come from. But anyway, the point is that that's what it seems to be the Georgian people, the history of the Georgian people. But getting back to what we're saying, right, so we said, right, that the Georgian people also seem to be a part of the Greeks, right, and that's why we have, right now, you see, we have these nations, right, Gomer and Magog, right, Magog, Gogia. You understand? This is like, could be similar to, yeah.
So Magog is the nation.
Right, Magog is one of the nations, and Madai, right, which we said is now Madai is in Persia. We have two different nations there, right? Paras and Madai, right? So Paras was Tiras, as we said, and Madai was the other nation, which was also in Persia. So we have those two people that makes up the Persian people, Paras and Madai. And then we have also Tuval, Meshech and Tuval, right? Now Meshech and Tuval. This is the nations, right, that they're also in Europe. It seems to be like they're in Northern Europe somewhere, whatever. But it seems like that they migrated, according to the Abarbanel. There's a Perush, the Abarbanel. He writes over there that Meshech and Tuval, he identifies them very, very, very well. What he says is that they were in Northern Europe at one time, like somewhere in the area of France and something, northern France. So what he says was something interesting. He says that I think the Scandinavians are more like the Germanic, like more like the Germanic people more. But he says that these people, what happened was that they migrated towards the west of Europe, So it seems like from what he's saying, this is the people that we call today Anglo-Saxon, because they were the ones who came from Central Europe, Northern Central Europe, and they migrated over to England, and then from England they came to America also, So this is the Anglo-Saxon, the Wasps, exactly, yeah. So all these people are the sons of Yefet. And as we said, right, that we mentioned last week also, that the Bnei Esav are also mixed with them. They are like the elite of these nations. Bnei Esav are all mixed up with the Bnei Yefet. And one is that like they make one society, and most of these countries, right, as we said, became included in the Roman Empire in the end, right? So that's why they took on Christianity, and from there and all these things. That's how it all developed. All this. Okay, so that's Yefet. Okay, we pretty much got the picture.
Look at what one Jew did.
Now,
not the Jew. Hold on. We didn't get to the Jews.
So now, Ubnei Ham, Kush, Mitzrayim, Uput, Canaan. So now we're getting to Ham, right? Who was the sons of Ham? So as we said, right, that Ham was the forefather of the African people, right? He was the one who turned black, right, in the ark, as we talked about that, right, because of the sin that he did. He lived with his wife over there. He wasn't allowed to live with his wife. All these things. So because of that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu turned him black, and this is why they're black in Africa. So now what happens is
I remember Tzchoneguli Pilchasi, Chacham Pilchasi. He mentioned one time he did a darash. He said blacks are cursed by God. I guess that's what it was. I always wondered about that. So
he now brings right all the African nations over here that are descended from Ham. So it says Kush, right? Kush is Ethiopia, right? Africa, right? Mitzrayim is Egypt, right? Put, and right, Put is like Libya, around there, that area, right? Canaan, right? We know that Canaan, he was the one that conquered Eretz Israel at first, right? In other words, before the Jews came to Eretz Israel, so it was called Eretz Canaan, right? Because the Canaanim conquered that area first, and then the Jews came over and conquered it from them. That's what happened, right? So that's also Bnei Ham. So we have also here more Bnei Ham, Bnei Kush, right? So we have now Kush, who was the father of Ethiopia, the African people. So we have different nations over there, right? Seda, B'Chabila, B'Safta, V'Rama, B'Saftecha, U'Bnei Rama, Sheva U'Dedan, right? Sheva U'Dedan, these people seem to be the ones who live like in the like Saudi Arabia or over in that area. There's also blacks over there. You ever notice that? That in Saudi Arabia there's also black people there. And these are like these nations, Sheba and Dedan, because they are associated with the Muslims more. These people. They're more, understand? So there are people also, blacks, who are like Muslim oriented. In Africa there's many Muslim nations there. Right, so that's the way it is, right? So Muslims and blacks do have some kind of a connection with each other. So then he says, right, after that, So now, after he mentions the Cush, he brings the big son of Cush, right? The most famous son that he had, right? That which was not Obama. We're not talking about Obama. It says, "V'Cush yalad et Nimrod, hu echel liot gibor k'baaretz," right? So it says, right, that the famous son of Ham was Nimrod, right? Nimrod. He was the one who ruled over Babel, right? He was the first king over there in Iraq, over there in that area, the Mesopotamian area. He was the first king over there, and Nimrod. So this guy was like a famous guy. This guy, he had like a lot of things about him.
Was this the guy that did the empire, the tall building, or wanted to catch up to God?
Yes, actually, they did it. They did it over there, right? They did it over there. That building was done over there.
Yeah, but he was the king. It was his idea.
I don't think it was his idea. Let's see. If I remember correctly, it was not him. But anyway, what he's saying is that the most famous son that I think that was that story that you're talking about was before, before the period of Nimrod, right? Because Nimrod was alive, you know when? In the time of Abraham Avinu, right? He was still alive when Yaakov was alive. So Nimrod was much, much later, we're talking here about, but why does he bring him over here? Because he was the most famous son of Ham, so he skipped over here a few generations over here, he jumped over here to tell you that this guy was the most famous son. So what was so great about this guy? What was so famous about him? They say, right, in the word Nimrod, in the word, you can see what's there, right? If you know Hebrew a little bit, the word is mered, right? Mored. You know what it means Hebrew, mored. Rebel, right? He was rebellious. What does that mean? That he caused people to rebel against God, They say that he had a very smooth mouth, he was a good talker. He was a rapper, So, this guy knew how to rap, and he was able to convince people to go against Hashem. Meaning what? To say that not to keep religion, not to keep mitzvot, not to be fearful of the God's commandments, and so forth and so on. So he was Nimrod, the person who caused people to rebel against Hashem. So they say, right, that Nimrod was particularly a big Rasha. Why? Because he knew God, he knew God's rules. In other words, he wasn't like, shogeg. What that means, like, he wasn't just inadvertently doing this. He was doing it on purpose. He knew God, he knew God's rules, but he hated God, so he wanted to cause people to rebel against God. That's where he was. So they said that in Hebrew, they call that, right, makir et bor'o, mitkaven nimrod bo, right? What does that mean? That he knows his creator, he knows his maker, but he still wants to rebel against him, even though he knows. That's the way he was. So Nimrod was like a big problem. You know what I'm saying? He was a big headache for everybody. So what happens is that he becomes the king of Iraq, as we said, right? And the Zohar says something amazing about Nimrod. Something really amazing. It says, right, that as we already talked about in the first weeks, that we had the issue with the snake, the Nachash, and what he did with Adam Arishon and Chava and all these things. So they say that the snake, was the embodiment of the Satan in the world, right? Of the Satan. He was the agent of Satan over here, right? He was the one who did his bidding over here, right? He caused people to sin. So they say that Nimrod, right, was the one who took over that job from the snake. In other words, he was the one also embodiment of the Satan. He was like that. So Nimrod who took over that torch. The torch of the Satan was taken by him. This was like a very, very bad guy, this guy. So they say, right, after that, who took it after that? Esav. Right? Esav was the one who took it after that. So he became the snake after that, right? So it always, every generation has a nation, right, or a people that, embodies the Satan, the Satan, right? They're the evil people. They're the ones they're the army of Satan. Just like the Jewish people are the army of God, there's also the army of Satan. That's the same.
Who's the army of Satan in these times?
Well, we already mentioned, right, that the Bnei Esav, the sons of Esav, are the Christians. So they're the ones now who are doing that job. What does that mean?
So it's not one single country. It's
spread out. It's spread out because Edom, right? The Bnei Esav are going to spread out all over the world, as it says, right in the Chazal. They're going to spread all over the world until Mashiach comes. They'll be everywhere, right? All over the world. There they are.
I thought Mashiach came already. Donald Trump.
Oh, nice, very nice. Okay. So what? You must think that Beit HaMikdash is Trump Tower. Okay, that's good. I like that. That's very good. Okay, we gotta tell Donald that one. Donald J. Trump. We gotta tell him that. Okay, so anyway, getting back to where we were. So it says that Nimrod. Now, Nimrod is a very interesting character, right? Because there's all kinds of things we can say about him. Which is, first of all, right, that he was, as we said, he was alive in the time of Abraham Avinu. So Avraham Avinu had a big problem with Nimrod. What was the big problem? That Terach, his father, right, the father of Avraham Avinu, was close to Nimrod. He was one of his buddies over there. They were living in Babel. They were living in it's called like Ur Kasdim, they call it, right? There's a reason why they call it that name. There was a certain town over there called Ur Kasdim. So they say that Terach was an idolater. He was serving idols, right? So they say that he had a store that he was selling idols over there. This model A, model B, model C, whatever, fuel injection, all these things, whatever. So he had the idols over there. So one time they say that Avraham Avinu, he told Avraham, he said, I have to go to a trip, So he told him, wash the store for me, you're my son, my faithful son, watch my business when I go. So he tells Avraham Avinu to keep the store. In a sense, Avraham sees, right, these idols over there, he can't stand them, right? He was a monotheistic guy, believed in one God. So he can't stand to see idols, you know what I mean? So he does, he takes a hammer, and he breaks them, cuts them up into like dust, So comes back Terach, and he says this, he goes, my God, what happened over here? What did you do to my idols? You broke everything. This is my livelihood. This is my business. So Avraham tells him, he says, no, he says, Father, he says, I didn't do that. What are you talking about? He says, what do you mean you didn't do that? He says, who did it? He says, who was it? You tell me, I'll take care of him. So he tells him, he says, Abba, he says, aren't you the one who believes that these idols have their own life? They're able to, they're alive and they're like gods, you believe like they're gods, no? So he says, what happened? They got into a fight with each other and they beat up each other. That's what happened. So he tells his father. So he tells him, he says, what are you talking about? He says, they're made out of stone. They don't beat up each other. What are you talking about? He tells him, So he admitted himself that they were nothing. They were worthless. You know what I mean? So whatever. Anyway, the point is that once this whole thing occurs, so goes Terach, the father of Avraham, and tells Nimrod about this. He was a king. So tells Nimrod, says, listen, I have a son who's very rebellious. This guy. You know what he did? He broke all my idols like that. And he says, he wants to be monotheistic, believe in one God. What is this business? He says, you got to take care of my son. You got to do something with this guy. So tells Nimrod, okay, fine. Well, we're going to take care of him. Don't worry. We're going to show him something. We'll teach him a lesson. Yeah. So what happens is he takes Avraham, arrests him. Has arrested. The FBI comes. Arrests him, and they put him in jail for 10 years. He was in jail for 10 years. In the pit. We're not talking about, the luxury jails of America, right? We're not talking about those. We're talking about, underground. What I mean? With the mice and the rats and all those things. So 10 years he's in jail. So finally they bring him out of jail, and after 10 years. And they bring him to Nimrod, Avraham Avinu, and they said, so Nimrod tells him, he says, I heard you're making problems with your father, this and that, and, you want to do monotheism, one God. He says, who told you like that it's one God? Who told you? There's many gods. We worship many gods over here in this country. Who told you all these things? What gives you the gall to make all these, this kind of revolution over here? So Avraham tells him, he says, he tries to prove to him, by the way, logically, there's only one God. It has to be. So he gives him all kinds of proofs. So Nimrod, starting to get a headache from all this. He says, oh my God, this guy's too smart for me, You get all kinds of proofs. Why is only one God? And all of a sudden, so he says, listen to me. He says, listen, forget about this. Okay, you're a smart guy. You're a wise Alec. He says, you know what I'm going to do? He says, if you really believe in one God, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw you into a furnace, into an oven, and let's see if God comes to save you. I think you're going to die. You're going to get burned like to the crisp. So he tells him, I think you're going to die. But you know what? If you really believe in one God, let him come and save you. What do I care? So, okay, so comes that's what they did. They threw him in there, right? So comes the malach, the angel, and takes him out of there. So he was saved. So, this is how Avraham Avinu got famous, that when this event occurred, so everybody said, oh, wow, this guy, we heard that some guy is talking about one God, and, he got saved from the furnace, and, Nimrod couldn't kill him, and all these things, so this became like a big sensation, this whole thing, you understand? So this is how Avraham Avinu, little by little, got to be, publicized, and became, the spiritual leader of that generation, whatever. There's also, they say another interesting story, which is what they say that Avraham had a brother, right, and his name was Haran. So Haran was, he was not as faithful as Avraham Avinu was. He was a little bit more in doubt, 50-50, one foot over here, one foot over there, we spoke about it. So one of these guys. So what happens is that Haran is like standing there, while they're throwing Avraham Avinu into the furnace. So he says, you know what? He says, I don't know who's going to turn out right. I don't know if it's Nimrod going to be right or Avraham is going to be right. I'm not really sure. 50-50. So he says, you know what I'll do? I'll wait till we'll see what happens. And then whoever wins, I'll go to their side. That's what I'll do. This way. So what happens is now he sees that Avraham Avinu comes out of the oven, all unburned, unscathed, right? So comes out. So now they ask Haran, they ask him a question. They said, so whose side are you on? So he says, I'm on my brother's side, Avraham Avinu. What are you talking about? So they said, okay, let's try you. We'll throw you into the furnace to see if you're going to be also saved. Let's try you. So they threw him in and he died. So this is what happened. He got burnt over there. What happened was that after Haran got killed over there, then they took his son Lot, right, who was a nephew of Avraham Avinu, and they left that place. They went to travel to a different area because once that event occurred, it was made like a big ruckus over there, whatever. So they had to get out, just for peaceful reasons, whatever. There's also some Mefarshim say a different reason why they had to get out was because Avraham Avinu, he was already 75 years old at that time. He didn't have any children, So he wanted to change his mazal. So they say, right, Chazal, right, Shinui makom shinui mazal. What does that mean? That if you see that you're not succeeding, in a certain place, you can't get married, like your friend Jeff, whatever, all these things, whatever. They say you should go somewhere else, maybe, try a different country, whatever, different place.
Philippines.
Right, whatever, Philippines, right. So it's going to change your mazal. So they say you should go to a different place. If you can't make it over here, family, you can't have children over here, so go somewhere else. They'll change your mazal. That's what happened, right? The Kadosh Baruch Hu, by the way, did three things for Avraham Avinu in order that he should have children, right? First of all, he changed his location. He told him to leave there, to go to Eretz Israel. Number one. Also, he changed his name, right? Avraham. He was Avram. He made him Avraham, right? So there's two things, and also there's another thing, which is that he got the Brit Milah that he did, right? So all these things, they changed his mazal, became a different person. So once he did all that, he was able to have children. That was the whole thing. So he needed all these changes, right? So now what we're saying is like this, right? That Avraham Avinu. Before we get to Avraham Avinu, let's just see if we have anything left over here to talk about. Because that's a different date. We're talking about 1 month, next week or 2 weeks down the road. So let's just see first what we have to cover over here before we go over there. Okay. So then, right, we already covered, as we said, the sons of Ham. We covered the sons of Yafet. Now we have to go to Shem, right? So who is Shem? As we said, right, Shem is the forefather of the Jewish people, obviously. But besides that, also he has many other nations that came from him. Okay? So who are they? These are the Middle Eastern people, the Asian people, right? Asia Minor, Middle East, like Caucasian, all these these are from Shem. Okay? So now we're going to see who they are. So it says, right, his sons were Elam, Ashur, Ve'apachshad, Ve'lud, Ve'aram, right? So Elam is also close to Iran, right? In that area, close to Iran. Ashur is like Iraqi area. So meaning what? That Ashur was mixed with several peoples over there, as we said, right? Because there was also Ashur, there was also in Iraq other peoples as well. Iraq was like a mixture of people, just like we have today in America. That's the way it was in those days. Ve'ashur ve'apachshad ve'lud ve'aram. So Aram, right, is what? Aram is Syria. Right? That's why they call the Syrian people, they call them Aram Tzova. Aram is like, that's Syria, that's the Syrian people. Today, by the way, most of the people in Syria are like, Muslims, right? Arabs, whatever. But in those days, that wasn't the case, because they didn't have Arabs at that time. So what they had is basically, they had a nation called Aram, right? And what happened was that this nation, Aram, wasn't Syria, as we said, but later on, as the came Sennacherib and Nebuchadnezzar, they sent all the nations to exile. So what happened was that Aram also went to exile. they got sent out of, and they went to a place called Kir. That's what it says, right? And it seems like a lot of people want to say that the Armenians come from Aram. It's Armenians, right? Same sound. You see what I'm saying? Right? So Aram was also, they're like our brothers. The Armenians, by the way, look like Georgians, right? They're very, very similar. So until this day, it's the same thing, the same idea. So the Armenians seem to be from there. And then we have, right, so we said, right, that Arpachshad, who was one of the sons, had a son called Eber, right? And we know, as we mentioned before, that Shem, who was the father, right, the grandfather, and Eber, who was a grandson, had a yeshiva. They were the ones who were teaching Torah in those days. So that yeshiva started from the time of Noach, right, and ended at the time of Yaakov Avinu, around there, right? Until all that time, that yeshiva was still going. Can you imagine? Very long, over 1,000 years that yeshiva was going. Over 10 generations. So what happens is that Shem and Ever have this yeshiva, as we said, right? So they were the big chachamim of that generation. They say, by the way, that Yaakov Avinu also learned that yeshiva. Can you imagine? This was many generations after. So Shem was born from Noach, right? And we're talking about 12, 13 generations after, still Yaakov Avinu learned in his yeshiva. So you can imagine how long that yeshiva was going. It was a very, very long standing yeshiva. It wasn't Chafetz Chaim, did it? Okay, so let's go on. By the way, there's all kinds of theories regarding, who didn't really didn't cover. We didn't cover the Eastern people, right? We're talking about the Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, all these people, and we're talking also about India, which is interesting also as well. Pakistan, all those areas.
There's a community of Chinese Jews, about 500 of them, that live in one community and keep all the Jewish laws. There's 500 people. Yes,
it's very well known. These tribes over there, these tribes. By the way, those tribes that now are identifying themselves as Jews all of a sudden. It's not all of a sudden, by the way. It's been for a long time. But what I'm saying is that they were not really sure about their ancestry. We still have some doubts. You know why that is? Because they didn't really have a tradition regarding marriage and divorce and all these things. Get, ketubah, kiddushin, all these things. So because of that, we have a concern. That they're not really. It could be that they're mixed with goyim. So therefore, if one of these people wants to come and become now, let's say live in Israel, whatever. So what they do is that they force them to convert, because just in case they're not Jewish, it could be that they're not. So because of that, they have to go undergo conversion. Just in case, you never know. When you have a safek, when you have a doubt, you have to do conversion. Because you never know. You cannot rely just on some kind of
So there was one nation, south part of Russia.
Yeah. Khuzar. You're talking about Khuzar? Yes. What about it? They converted to Judaism. Yeah, that's what happened. They all converted. Yes, that's very well known. By the way, there's all kinds of theories today who these people are. It seems like they're scattered all over, whatever. It seems like they got mixed into the Ashkenazi world. That's what happened. They pretty much they're intermarried with the Ashkenazim, whatever. So but they really did convert. It's true. They converted. The whole country converted. They had a king who was into Judaism, and he converted his whole country. So his whole populace he converted. A very interesting story, right? It's brought down in a certain book, right, about this. Kuzari. It's called Kuzari. Yeah. So yes. So getting back to where we are. So now, what about these people, right? We're talking about the Oriental people. What's the story with them? The truth is, right, that the ones who are Muslim, we're talking about, right, Pakistan and all these areas. It seems like, according to the Rambam, these people are from the sons of Keturah. Who's Keturah? Keturah was the second wife of Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu had two wives, right? Actually, he had three, right? He had first Sarah, right? Sarah was his main wife, and then he had Hagar, right? And that was the one that Ishmael came from. Right, the Arabs came from there, and then we had Keturah. Right, what happened was when
the same but different.
Right, the Chazal say that's exactly it. By the way, not everybody agrees with that. There's like a sort of a machloket. There's a dispute about that. But anyway, you're right. The Chazal say in the Midrash that Keturah and Hagar was the same lady. Right, same lady, yes. So the point is like this, that regardless of what you say, that they're the same person or not the same person, whatever it is, the point is that when Sarah Imenu died, so Avraham Avinu needed a new wife. He was a widower, so he couldn't live without a wife. So he married Keturah, right? And this lady Keturah had 5 sons, right? As the Torah, says. So these sons, it seems like it says right in the pasuk in the Torah that Avraham Avinu didn't want to keep them together with Yitzchak. Why? Because they were not tzaddikim, they were not tahor, they were not kadosh, they were not holy like Yitzchak was. So therefore, he wanted to keep a distance between Yitzchak and them, separate them. So therefore, what they did was he sent them away, like to the east. It says right. So it seems like the Eastern people come from these sons. That's what they want to claim, right? Many people, that the Eastern people come from the sons of Avraham Avinu, who came from these 5 sons that he had from Keturah. So the Rambam says, right, that also a lot of the Muslim people, who are mixed in with the Arabs, are also from Keturah. So meaning what? The Keturah and Ishmael became sort of like one people, like under the Muslim banner.
They're the same mother.
Right, exactly. Right. But more than that, they also took on the same religion and so forth and so on. Right, exactly. But also other people, what they want to say is that the Oriental people, also Chinese, and also they are from Keturah. Some people want to say. By the way, according to the Rambam, we don't find that. It doesn't seem, from his words, we don't see that. So I really don't know what their source is for that. I think they really don't have any source. They're just like guessing, basically. It seems like it's just a guess. But if that's not correct, which I think it's not, probably the more correct idea is that they probably come from what do I want to say? They come from Ham, because one of the sons of Ham, it says, was Sini, right? That's what it says, which is China, right? Today in Hebrew we say Sin is China. Right, so it seems it could be that those Oriental people are from Ham. They're just different. What do you call it? Different part of the Ham ancestry. It's possible, very possible. But they're not black, okay? But they're like yellow, whatever. So anyway, it's interesting. It's not really sure where they come from. It's one or the other, probably, right? One of these 2 theories, as we just mentioned, right? Okay, so then we have to go, once we're finished with this, we have more time? We have more time, right? Yeah. You guys in a hurry? Okay, let's go on a little bit. Because we have one more thing to cover in this Noach, before we finish Noach, right? Which is what? The Tower of Babel, right? The famous story about the
tower.
Right, the Tower of Babel, the Babylonian tower that they built. So what's the story over here? This is like a very strange, when you read this in the Chumash, this whole thing, it sounds like something outer space, It doesn't sound like normal, whatever. It's no logic there. It seems to be not really logical. What happened there? So, but if you read the words of Chazal, though, it becomes much more logical, much more reasonable. So what story is like this, right? That they had like a group of nations, like a United Nations kind of thing, of many nations together, and they were looking for a place to go. They had like a very large populace, like a very large population, and they had to go somewhere where it could fit all of them. So they found Iraq, right, which is like a valley, Mesopotamian valley, right? They found over there was a big area there, so they said, let's go over here. We'll make our country over here. We'll build our country. And then they decided, right, that they tried to do like some kind of a safeguard over here for their country. What does that mean? What was a safeguard? There's like different versions of the story. They're all true, by the way, because there was different people who had different ideas what to do and what their motives were here. Could build like a tall building like that, which is something amazing. By the way, even today we don't have buildings like this size. We don't have them. It was the tallest building that was probably ever built in history. It was much taller than what's in Dubai, whatever, in Dubai and in Chicago and Manhattan, whatever it is, right? All these places. So what's the story? The story is that, as we said, right, one part of this people had this intention to give themselves a name, right? That's what it says, right? That we have a name. And because they would have a name, that they're like a powerful, advanced country, so people won't scatter, they'll come, and more people come, they'll become the most powerful nation in the world, superpower. This was one version of the story. There was also another version, which is what? There was a different group over there who had a different intention altogether, which was what? They wanted to make war with God, if you can, if you think you can. So their intention was that what? They said, we're going to build a tower, right? Something, it's like a very primitive idea, like something very primitive. What's the primitive idea? They said, we're going to build a tower, and it's going to be so tall, we're going to go up to heaven, and start making a war with God. Like, he's in the Shemaim, he's in the heavens, so we'll go up there, and we'll start to shoot at him, shoot missiles and all kinds of stuff. So that was also one group, right? Which was what? They wanted to make a war with God. And also another thing, which is what? That they wanted to make this tower in the name of idolatry, right? Of an idol, right? So this way, to show that this idol is the most powerful thing in the world, and and even God can't fight with them. So there was another thing. There's also a third group, which had a different idea, right? Which was what? That they were afraid that there was going to be another flood, right? Once the flood of Noach occurred, so people were very scared of that. They said, wow, what's going to be if another flood comes and wipes us out again? And they knew, by the way, why the flood came. They knew it was because of the sins. They knew that. So what they did was they said, this God, we got to do something to protect ourselves from this God. What we'll do is we'll build a very high tower. In this way, if the flood comes, we'll go up there and we'll be saved. Understand? We'll have a place to go to escape. This was also another version of this thing. So all these people had very strange, wicked ideas. All of them, like a very, 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 very weird stuff going on here. Very strange things. So what happens is that they start to build a tower. So they say, by the way, the Chazal, that in the end, something amazing, it says in Talmud, right? That this tower was so tall, right? That 1/3 of it got swallowed up in the ground in the end, right? When God, foiled their plans, 1/3 of it got swallowed up in the ground, 1/3 of it was left up above ground, and 1/3 of it got burnt. So in other words, it was 3 times bigger than what you see now. Now we don't see it, but in the times of Talmud, they still had it there. It was still there. 1/3 of it was left. So they still had it. So they say, right, you can see from 1/3 that's left how big it actually was, because it was 2/3 more than that. So it was something colossal, this thing. So what happens is that God now comes and sees what they're doing. So the verse over here is talking like very interesting language. Let's look at the language, right, of the verse over here. So it says like this: So first of all, it says something very strange over here, right? It says about God came down to see, the building of this tower. So you say to yourself, what does that God need to come down for? We can't see it from there. What, he doesn't have strong enough binoculars? To see it from? What does he have to come down here for? He's omnipotent, omnipresent, right? So he's everywhere. So what does he have to? So the answer is, right, that really it's true. God didn't need to come down over here to see it, but it's coming here to teach people something, right? Coming to teach. It's a Musar lesson, right? An ethics lesson for people. Why? Because they said, right, when you're a judge, you should never judge something unless you actually go and see, with your eyes what's going on. You know what I mean? Don't just rely on hearsay. Oh yeah, they told me that I heard. On Fox News, that's the way it is. Okay, Fox News, but did you see it? Did you go there? Maybe they're telling you there's something false. Maybe they're trying to protect Trump. Whatever it is. What was? So right, fake news. Yeah, fake news. So everything is fake news. You understand? Light it up. God bless you. All the best. So. This is why they say, right, that when you're a judge, don't rely on hearsay. What some reports.
If it's a unanimous hearsay?
Even that you shouldn't rely on, because sometimes people make up stories, and they all
came down. You can open your eyes also.
So it comes.
God came down. You cannot open your eyes.
So it comes to tell you, right, the judge has to see. By the way, until this day, we actually find stories like this. With judges, like sometimes they say, right, that there's a dispute between 2 people. There's famous cases like this in America, even, and so there 2 people are telling 2 different versions of what's going on. Yes. So the judge goes out in the street to check, to see what he actually, he goes out there, with his robe and everything. He goes out. Yeah. That's what it is. Yes. So. Until this day, we still have this concept, Baruch Hashem. It's a very good thing. It's a very good thing. So then we go on to say, right, so what does God say once he sees this tower? ויאמר אדוני הן עם אחד ושפה אחד לכולם וזה אכילם לעשות ועתה לא יבצע מהם כל אשר יעזמו לעשות. So it says something very amazing over here, which is what? It says, God comes down and he says, what? They have one language, they're one people, they're all unified. They're totally united, these people, with one idea, with one thought, with one goal. And he says, because of that, whatever they want to do, they're going to be able to do it. Nothing is going to stop them. You understand? In other words, we see from here, by the way, the power of unity, which is an amazing concept, in the Torah. That once you have a unified goal, sometimes even God can't stop you. That's the amazing thing, right? We have to explain what that means, by the way. We have to see what that means. By the way, there's also another explanation, right? That God is not saying that nothing will stop them. It's like he's saying, what, you think nothing will stop them? In other words, I will go and stop them. That's another way, like a question, what, you think I'm not going to stop them? I will stop them. So that's a different way of looking at it, but they're both true.
Why stop them?
Why stop them? Because they're making war with God.
Make!
Rabbi,
that's a good one. I like that.
When you say even God can't stop them, does it really mean God can't stop them, or he does?
I'll explain to you right now.
He doesn't want.
It's a very, very powerful question. This question, okay? I want to explain to you. The idea is like this, but I want to tell you a story, and you'll understand what it means. Somewhat, because really this concept is very amazing. They say, right, that there was a generation in the first temple, right, the Northern Kingdom, as we talked about. Northern Kingdom was, right. So there was a king called Achav, one of the kings of the Northern Kingdom, and he was a very wicked king. This guy, a very big Rasha. So they say that he was serving idols, making everybody serve idols, and totally taking away the service of God. Big Rasha. So what happened was that they say to Chazal something amazing. They say that even though Achav was the biggest Rasha, and his people were all idolaters, Jews. You know what I mean? All of them idolaters. So it says, right, that all the wars that they had during his lifetime, not one Jew died in the wars. Not one soldier died. Amazing, right?
Amazing.
So, meaning what? And they also say another thing, by the way, which is also amazing. They say in Masechet Megillah that Achav was such a powerful king, he ruled over the whole world. In other words, every nation was subordinate to him in the whole world. Can you imagine? We only find, by the way, 2 Jewish kings that were like that, right? Shlomo and Achav. Those were the only ones.
Even though he was a bad guy. Even though
he was a bad guy. That's the whole point, right? That's the whole point. Now, what's the point here? This guy's a bad guy, as you said.
Yes.
Okay? So then, why is God so good to them that not one person dies, and the king rules over the whole world? And they had, by the way, wealth and everything. They had an amazing kingdom.
Well,
very
that's
powerful
what you told
kingdom.
me years ago about Esav, that because Esav was so kind to his father,
right?
He loved his
Yes,
father so much,
yes.
That God actually lets him rule the world.
Right.
Basically.
But here we're talking about something else, right? Esav, you're right. It's because of Kibbud Avim, because of honoring their father.
Yes,
it's very true.
Yes.
But here we're talking about something else.
Honoring his father or honoring his parents?
Well, we don't really find that he honored his mother, by the way. We find that he honored his father.
Okay, I got it.
We don't find that.
I should have been nicer to my father.
By the way, I must tell you that there are many poskim who say that if your father is not religious, like doesn't keep Shabbat and whatever, you're not really obligated to honor him at all. The only thing that you're obligated to do is just not to like disgrace him. Like you can't insult him, stuff like that. You can't like speak to him like disgraceful way, embarrass him and stuff like that. That you cannot do. But like give him honor, you're not really obligated to do. But there's also there's a discussion about that. By the way, it's not the time to talk about it now.
Okay, next time.
That's a different discussion, right? You didn't want to talk about halakha. I'm not going to get.
No, I don't want to go into 10 commandments.
Rabbi, I just wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you before I forget this Tower story.
Right.
Do you think the song "Stargazer" is based on that?
I don't know. I haven't even listened to the words. I just listen to the music.
It's interesting because the song has lyrics that are somehow identifiable.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
You know what?
There's a wicked wizard building this thing.
You got to show me that because I really haven't. I just listen to the music more than the words.
It falls, and there's blood on the sand.
Right. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting what you're saying. Okay, so there's a lot of things to talk about there. So Achav, right? They say all these things, good things about Achav. So the thing is now, the question is, what merit did they have to have this kind of great, wife like that?
Right.
So you know what the Chazal say? By the way, they say the opposite of a different generation, right? The generation of David HaMelech was just the opposite. All of them tzaddikim, all of them religious, all of them keeping the Torah.
And
yet people were dying in the wars. There were people who were dying. They were winning the wars, but they had casualties. You understand? So So the question is, what? Achav is better than David? What's going on here? What's the story? So the answer is that they say that in the generation of Achav, one thing they had unity and love and respect for each other. Everybody respected each other. You understand? There was no hatred. There was no lashon hara.
It's us, I'm sorry to say, and the Bukharians. The Bukharians respect each other.
I like that. That's good. So, no lashon hara.
Okay? The Georgians love each other. The Bukharians.
The grass is always green on the other side.
Look at us. We don't have connections anymore. God forbid something happens. We hear it a year later.
It's true what you're saying.
Nobody cares.
We have a lot of wounds. We have a lot of wounds to heal. That's very true.
The Bukharians are all together. The youth are all together. The old ones are all together. They're always together.
By the way, David, I must tell you that they're also starting to...
Listen, we were...
We're not going to get into that now.
When we used to get together, I don't know if I knew you then. I was like 12 years old. We used to go up to the mountains.
Yes.
Yeah, with all the taxi cabs. Yes, we used to go.
I never saw Jimmy there. It's true. I never saw Jimmy there. Okay, so he didn't have the zchut to be there.
No, there was a time when we came and we needed each other.
Okay. Can I ask you a question? Who do you blame? That we have no unity and the youth is not coming.
I love people.
No. I blame myself.
I love people.
I blame myself. And I'll tell you why. Do you have any kids?
I have kids. My kids don't even speak Georgian, unfortunately.
That's not the point. Do you have any kids?
I have kids.
Why aren't they here?
Because they're losers.
Why?
Because they're
you
losers.
raised them wrong.
Well, I didn't raise them wrong.
That's why I say I blame myself. Because at the right time, I didn't schlep my kids to the temple. I start from myself.
I'll tell you what then. If that's the way you want to look at it, then I blame myself also.
So our generation, meaning my generation, your generation.
Yes, we fucked up. I'm sorry, Rabbi.
Let's get back to our story, right? But you guys are talking something very important. It's a very important discussion. This is not the time for it, but it is actually a very important discussion.
No, I'm just injecting this because it's
very important discussion.
So let's blame ourselves. Yeah. I start from myself first.
All I can tell you, Jimmy, is that I know him since we're 13, and he tried this 20 years ago, and me and a couple other guys were the only ones showing up over here. They know he's here. Why don't they come? This is very interesting stuff. You don't have to become a rabbi to hear. This is very interesting to me.
God bless you, David. So let's get back to where we said, right? So
they're free to come.
You guys are talking good things.
Come here next week?
No, I didn't know he was doing it.
Now you know?
Yes.
God willing, you're going to be here next
week?
Why
not? What's stopping me?
God bless you. God bless you. We need you.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay.
Everyone.
Yes. That's it.
That's all I do.
Right. Absolutely. You guys are the leaders of the generation. What can I tell you? So, getting back to Achav, it says...
You said they had unity.
Right, they had unity. No Lashon Hara. They didn't speak Lashon Hara. And they also didn't, they didn't report each other, these, the ones
and
who...
Yet they were,
the squealers,
And yet, what did you call them?
They worshipped idols, they weren't worshipping God. They weren't worshipping God.
Yeah.
They were not serving God. So
this is the generation of the Babylonians.
Achav.
They're building the tower?
No, Achav is the generation, first temple in Jewish people, right? Let's
go back to the tower.
We have to point out this.
Like
this amazing thing.
Buddhists, they were moral and they were
something even worse than that.
No, I mean they
right.
There are religions that don't believe in God, but they teach you love.
Right.
And they teach you respect.
That's
no
true.
Matter what, right?
That's true.
Buddhism is like that, I'm assuming. Right. So you have to love each other, no matter what, even if there's no God or afterlife. And you have to respect each other, everybody around you. So it seems like
something like that, right? Yes. That some kind of cult thing, right? Okay, very nice. So anyway, the point is that they say that this is the reason why in Achav's generation there was no casualties in the wars.
Yeah.
On the other hand, in David HaMelech's generation, they say that there was casualties. So now the question is why? So they say that even though they were very religious and they were very big tzaddikim and they knew Torah, they were chachamim, they were a very wise generation. Everybody was wise. So they say that the problem was that there was hatred between them and competition.
That's
Lashon Hara.
It's the same thing as Rabbi Akiva's students.
Yeah.
Similar to that, yes.
So that's incredible that hatred amongst people,
jealousy, right?
That God can punish people to that degree, and yet you don't necessarily have to believe in Him. But as long as people love each other in a community,
hallelujah, brother,
God will save you.
Now, what's the interesting thing, though?
Why are we so hard on Jesus then? Because He taught. That's what He taught.
By the way, before we get into that issue, I just want to finish this idea because you guys are asking excellent questions. You guys are asking excellent questions. But what I want to say before we get to that, we will talk about this some other time.
Yeah.
But we have to talk about it like this: that we see from here that the unity is a very important thing. But by the way, regarding what you commented, even though in this world, right, unity grants you success as a nation, as a country, a tremendous success. But in Olam Haba, in the world to come, by the way, they don't take that into account so much. They take it what your mitzvot, that what you did. You understand? In this world, you can, right, exactly. Even as a nation, you're judged according to the mitzvot that you did, your spiritual level. But in this world, you could get away with being a bad boy as long as you're united. You understand?
Isn't that a big mitzvah, though, to love one another?
It's true. It's true what you're saying.
I mean, it would save their lives.
It just makes the society work. The society functions very well.
Absolutely.
It's like a well-oiled, machine. It's like, tick, 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 tick.
I never knew about that story, as I didn't about.
So now, why did I bring this in? Because this was the same story over here. You understand? This is why they were succeeding, these people, because they had unity. They had one language, one culture. So everybody spoke the same language. Can you imagine the whole world speaks one language? So there's a lot of unity. It causes a lot of unity, and this is what God comes and says. Oh my God! You see what's going on here? This is what they do. I gave them unity. I gave them good life. I gave them a good lifestyle. They had, by the way, success. They had comforts. They say, right? And this is the reason why they rebelled. They say, right? Why does a person rebel against God? Because he's too comfortable. When he's comfortable, he rebels. When he's got sarot, he's got, suffering, so he tends to get closer to God. You know what I mean? So these people, the reason they were one of the reasons why they rebelled is because they were very comfortable and had a very good life.
Yeah.
So because of that now, what happens is that God comes and says, you know what? According to the laws of nature, that I created the world, when you have unity, you got everything. You got everything. You succeed in everything you do. So according to the laws of nature, these people are going to succeed. Nothing is going to stop them.
So he was fearful.
In a sense, not fearful,
It
but
doesn't make sense.
in other words,
God was fearful.
right? It doesn't fear anything, God, right?
Exactly.
But what we're saying is like this, right? That this is now going against the purpose of creation. In other words, if we let them to do what they want to do, my purpose of creating this world is not being fulfilled.
Not to go up, to go flat. I'm serious, because they were going down instead of going east to west.
Right. So what God says is like this. I have to intervene over here. In other words, I have to come in and interfere with their plans, even though according to nature they really should succeed. So it comes down, right? And what does he do? He mixes up their language, right? It's their tongue. So everybody's speaking a different language, right? So one guy tells the other, "Bring me a hammer." He brings them a cup. So what kind of confusion, right? Yes. So because they got confused, they start to fight with each other, and then one gives a punch to one the other. Then it goes into a fist fight. Blah blah blah. Start to fight with each other, and they broke up into different factions. Different languages and so forth and so on. So what God did was like this, right? That, by the way, this is why we have today all these different languages. As we said, right, in the beginning in the world, there was basically two languages that were spoken, Hebrew and Aramaic, right? As we said. But this wasn't now the time where God split up the world into different nations and different languages. The nations were already split up. But now we're talking about the languages also got split up. So because of that, this forms like a barrier between nations. They can't really get along very well. Right? There's one wise guy who said one time, right? I think it was Mark Twain or whatever, one of these people. Right? He said, that all the nations hate each other and all the nations hate the Jews. In other words, they're all you understand? They hate each other too, but all of them together they hate the Jews. Right. Exactly, the Jews. Right? Exactly. So what does that mean? The nations also hate each other.
This is from where?
From
the Talmud, or what are you reading?
What? No, this is a camera. It's a camera. We're just going on Facebook.
From the Chumash, the story.
Yeah, but it's also coming from Midrashim, all kinds of the sources besides that, right? Commentaries, David.
Sure.
So as we said, right, that what we have over here is that now God comes and intervenes, and He splits them up, and they become separate factions. And by the way, it says over there in the Chazal also, that not only God split them up and split up their languages, but He also did something very amazing, which was what? He turned some of the people into monkeys and into elephants, right? Whatever. So what's the story? That He punished them, because they were trying to rebel against Him. So He, made them mock them like that, turn them into monkeys and stuff. So, by the way, this is the reason why, you want to hear something amazing? That there's, in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Halakha, it says that if you go to the zoo, right, or if you go to Africa, whatever, and you see a monkey or an elephant, so you have to make a bracha on that. have to make a blessing. Can you imagine see a monkey? Baruch atah Hashem, blah blah blah. What bracha? Huh?
What do you say? What do you mean a monkey?
No, what do you say? You know what's a bracha? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam meshaneh haberiot. That's what you have to say. Meshaneh haberiot.
I see.
So
What does it mean, Menashe?
I'll tell you.
So ultimately, their unity didn't work.
Right, it didn't work because God intervened. But if God wouldn't have intervened according to the laws of nature, it should work. So meaning what? In general, it does.
I see.
That's what it is. You understand?
Does he always intervene, or
Not always. Sometimes we said, right, in the time of Ahab, he didn't intervene. He let them just go like that. But truth is, he did intervene, right, in the end, because why? Eliyahu Hanavi came, right, and he called off the rain for 3 years. They didn't have rain. There was famine. You understand? So in the end, God did intervene.
When was Achab?
The first temple era.
So David HaMelech
It was before him.
prepared.
David was before Ahab.
David was before. David was, so it was Achav. But didn't Shalom HaMelech build the first temple?
Yes, but the first temple stood 410 years, right?
So he was after.
So Ahab was doing the first temple era, but after Shlomo.
After Shalom.
Yes.
Not before that.
Way after Shlomo, by the way. We're talking about, let's say, 5 generations after? 5-6 generations?
Okay.
So what we're saying is that now,
Right. Thank you.
God now, we have to make a blessing,
With the monkey and
Meshaneh Briot, right? When we see monkey and the elephant. So the question is, why do we make this blessing? What's the reason? So, according to the simple meaning, you know why we make this blessing? Because we say, right, that they look different, these animals, like they look like distinctive. Strange, like you see, the nose of the elephant, the beak, and the monkey, looks like almost like a human, all these things, right? They look strange, these animals. So because of that, we make a blessing. What is that? It says Meshaneh. What does that mean? That he makes the creations strange, like different. Meshaneh means to make them different, to make them, not the normal way.
So before this period, there were monkeys or elephants?
It's a good question. I'm not really sure about that. Okay, let me check up on that. But very good question. But what we're saying now is like this, right? Every time, I understand. I'm not here to argue either.
I understand me.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just here to say a couple of things, a couple of stories.
Okay.
So now things like this. According to the simple meaning, by the way, what that means is that God makes strange-looking creatures, Meshaneh Briot, right? But really, the truth is that the Chazal say that what's the real reason why we make this bracha, Meshaneh Briot? Because when during the time of the tower, as we said, right, he took some of the people and turned them into monkeys and elephants. So because of that, we say Meshaneh Briot, he changed their creations, meaning what? He changed them from human to become animal. You understand? That's how we make the bracha, Meshaneh Briot. And so according to the deeper meaning, that's what it's for.
So he chose the people randomly, or whoever?
No, these are the people who are certain. Yeah, right. The worst of them. Right?
The worst rebels.
Yes. That's the way it was. So I just wanted to point out that interesting side point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So as we said, so comes and tells us, right, the Chazal, that the Chumash comes and tells us that this is why they call that country Bavel, right? Babylon. Why is it called Bavel? So in Hebrew, the word Bavel means to mix up, right? So what does that mean? He mixed up the nations, right? Instead of making them, you understand? So they got diverted and they got scattered. So this is why the nation, that country is called Bavel, because he mixed up their languages. Right? He made this one French, and this one Spanish, and this one German, and everything else. So therefore, it's called Bavel, which is mixture. Right? By the way, that country is also called Shinar. Right? It's a different name. There's several names for that country, for Iraq. Right? So Shinar, what does that mean? There's also meaning to that one. Right? It says right that when the flood of the time of Noach killed all the people, so the bodies had to go somewhere. They just didn't go. There wasn't a vacuum cleaner that came and just swept them up. So where did those bodies go? So they could say because that Bavel was a low-lying area, as we said, it was a valley, right? So because of that, they all went over there. Right? They got washed up over there. So the word Shinar means Shanin Aru. What does that mean? That all the bodies got drifted into that area, and that's why they call it Shinar. So there's names for these. Probably they got buried or whatever, or they got whatever. Usually what happens is that even if they don't get buried, the animals come and eat them. So yeah, they're pretty much Right, but eventually there were. When they came out of the ark, so they eat them. That's what happens. So the birds come and the animals and the vultures and all these things, right? And they come and eat them, and that's the way it is. So that's the story regarding the tower. And then, right, as we said, then the Torah accounts 10 generations that are from Noach to Avraham Avinu. Right, these are all the sons of Shem. Right, and then finally, as we said, right, we get to Terach, who was the father of Abraham, and he had two brothers, right, Haran and Nahor. So we said Haran died, right, in that fire story there over there, the whole thing. And Nahor, right, was also had his own family, right. So what we find is that that Avraham Avinu married Sarah, right. At that time her name was Sarai, right. And Nahor, his brother, married Sarai's sister, who was Milcah. So these two brothers took sisters. And those are the two families that were the forefathers of the Jewish people. Why? Because Abraham Avinu, as we said, right, was the forefather of the Jewish people, obviously. But also the family of Nahor, right, came from that family. Our mothers, right, Rivka and Rachel and Leah came from that family. So because of that, right, the Jewish people got built from those two families, and that's why the Torah concentrates on them over here. To show you that they were the ones, right, that the world got built from. So they say, by the way, the Chazal, right, that those 10 generations from Noach until Avraham Avinu, right, it was like the pits. What does that mean? Like, it was very wicked and there was a lot of wickedness going on. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu was very angry for those 10 generations until Avraham Avinu came, right, and he changed the whole picture of the world, right? He publicized monotheism, he publicized that there's one God, you have to serve God, and you have to love God, and you have to bless God, you have to pray to God. All these things were publicized by Avraham Avinu. Before that, it was like a whole total, like,
flood, just because we had an evil people.
Right.
God gave us flood.
Right.
We come out of the ark, and we sin more.
Yes, right. Nothing changed really. So the interesting thing is that they say, by the way, we touched on this before, by the way, but something amazing, right? That they say that the Jewish people actually really come from these people. What does that mean? That we are the reincarnations of these generations. What does that mean? First, we have the generation of flood, right? That got killed off. And then we have the generation of the dispersion, right, of the tower over here. So that generation of the dispersion of the tower was a reincarnation of the generation of the flood. It was the same people, same souls. And then once the Kadosh Baruch Hu scattered them, and did what he did to them, he punished them again. So then they got reincarnated again into the Jewish people who were in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. So we really come from these people. We are from them. So we're the good side. Understand? Because the bad side, as we said, Kadosh Baruch Hu cuts it off. And he takes it somewhere else, right? But the good side was the Jewish people. So the good side was reincarnating the Jewish people in the Mitzrayim, and then they also had to work over there, right? They had to do hard slavery over there, hard labor for 210 years, in order to also take out the tumah, the impurity that was embedded in us. Where did the impurity come from? Because Adam Arishon, right, the first man, he sinned. So because of that, when he sinned and he separated from his wife, so he caused these souls, right, which are the souls of the Jewish people, to go down into the klipot, into the tumah, into the impurity. Right? And they had to come out of there. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, look at how much he had to do, how much effort he had to do just to bring us out. First he had to bring us back in the flood, then again in the dispersion, you understand? And then again in Mitzrayim, 210 years of hard labor, and then to give us the Torah, and we're still going at it, you understand? We still haven't finished our job. You understand? So in other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the whole purpose of the world, that he created the world, was to do this tikkun for these souls. That's the whole purpose of the world. That's why he created the world. That's what gives him, that's what he likes to do. Still
don't see so we'll
stop here, guys. Okay, we'll pick it up next time with Lech Lecha, right? With Avraham Avinu. Bezat Hashem.
God
bless you.
40 minutes we're doing. So